I spent $27,000 on a hard shell chamber and put it in the office because it wouldn't fit in the elevator where I live. And then I started to use it and I got massive, massive headaches because we didn't know I had mold. We didn't know what was wrong with me. And so I'm having this Herx response from the mold in my brain that we don't know is there that's causing these massive headaches. And I'm doing what everyone recommends is the number one thing you can do to improve oxygen flow in your brain.
This is the Longevity Loop podcast, and I'm your host, Brent Wallace. In every episode, I bring you the leading voices in longevity, plus my own insights to put the world's best strategies directly into your hands, making elite longevity strategies accessible to everyone, regardless of your background. So let's jump into the loop starting right now. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Longevity Loop podcast. Today's guest is Sandy Martin, creator of the Biological Edge framework, which she'll get into if you don't know exactly what that is off the bat. Founder of the BioEdge Longevity Summit, which is very cool. I always love talking to people that are organizing things in the longevity space and just a shaker and a maker, like getting everyone together. And it's longevity community is a cool community. And it's just really cool that Sandy has created a longevity summit. And I'm sure she'll talk about that. And then also on top of all those other things, Sandy is also the author of, I think 2 books, right, Sandy?
Yes.
I know Biological Edge and then Biohacking Starts With No, right? Those are the 2
That's right.
books. Okay, great. Got it. Nailed it. What I really appreciate about Sandy's work, and I almost got into it, but it's about cutting through the noise, because there's a ton of noise in all health things related. And it seems like even maybe longevity has a little bit more noise than just the normal health stuff. So, like trying to figure that out. But Sandy's message is really about cutting through all of that and focusing on what really matters, right? And so saying no to probably more than you say yes to is really, like, at least that's what I got out of it, the framework there. So Sandy's perspective and knowledge comes from experience, one, and then also dealing with her own health issues, mold exposure, which I know a lot of us have either dealt with personally or known someone personally has dealt with. It's a really big issue. And then, just like so many people, just trying to find the solutions for years and years and years, coming to dead ends, things that don't work. And then, trying to find the answers to it. And then, she came to an idea that the idea of better health actually starts with saying no. So, really novel concept, very wise concept. Actually, Sandy, I didn't say previously, but it reminds me, Tim Ferriss is writing that book on no. It's like he's writing a whole, like his next book is about saying no too. So
Really?
yeah, it's
Well,
really
I'm in good company.
really cool. So I don't know when it's going to come out. He's been working on it for years, but basically that's kind of the essence of that book too. And I think a little bit of, is it more like the investor side of things, not overcommitting, but still simplification, almost like a minimalist type approach that, it really resonates in a busy life today. So Sandy's building all kinds of really cool, interesting things. We'll get into them all. And so one thing I want to mention before we get into this, I'm not a doctor and I don't think Sandy is a doctor, but just we'll talk about all kinds of things. It's not medical advice. This is just a conversation between 2 friends. So take it for entertainment purposes only. If you hear anything that's interesting to you here and you're like, oh, wow, let's go check that out, check with your doctor first. It's super easy to do. And everything, especially with longevity medicine and kind of like more cutting edge stuff, it's so individualized. It's not just like take some vitamin D. It's just like these things are really personalized to individual. I mean, there's a reason it's called epigenetic testing or really precision medicine, because it really is focused on who you are, what your body is, your genes and your expression and all of that goes into it. So just really just double down on making sure that you talk to a medical expert, whoever that might be in your life, and don't take advice from us. We're just talking what's worked for us, what's worked for friends in our lives. So I just want to make sure that that is extremely clear, because it's very, very important with longevity medicine stuff. With that said, one thing that we just briefly talked about, which I got really interested in too, is Sandy has shared her mom's recovery journey, and it revolves around hyperbaric oxygen therapy, or HBOT, which we had a previous show around on the podcast about it, and it's just a really cool protocol. And Sandy's story with her mom is actually one of the first ones I've heard where someone's recovering from something instead of kind of doing it as a preemptive and just getting healthier thing. So I'm really excited to dig into that. And with that kind of long-winded intro, Sandy, welcome to the Longevity Loop podcast.
Thank you, Brent. I'm so happy to be here. And if I can start with why we were so shocked that my mom had a stroke in the first place, I think that might resonate with the crowd, because my mom had been on an intermittent fasting ketogenic diet for about 3 years. She was doing Wim Hof breath work, so that kind of Tumo style breathing, and was up to 90 seconds regularly in a breath hold, walking regularly. She was doing very, very, very well, even though she had high blood pressure and high cholesterol. And then she went to the doctor. She had been taking a supplement. She didn't know how important it was. And her blood pressure had come down. She thought it was from everything she was doing. She had 120/80, and the doctor was like, yeah, you don't need blood pressure medication. But she was taking a supplement that was helping her, and we didn't know. She stopped taking the supplement. She ended up having a stroke a few months later. I was at Dave Asprey's Biohacking conference when I got the call she was in the hospital. And so here we were, proactive, and I'm at an event just celebrating how we can do all of these things and prevent illness like this, prevent problems like strokes. And I was shocked. And so I jumped on the first plane I could get out of Austin, went back home to Louisville, and showed up around 1 a.m. at my mom's bedside in the hospital. And she had a PEMF device at home. We had a MagnaWave at home. Those are made in Louisville too. And she felt dizzy about 24 hours before she went to the hospital. She had a dizzy spell. And she was like, I don't feel great. I guess I'll sit on my PEMF. And so she did, and she continued. She got a little better, but her symptoms did progress such that my dad took her to the hospital the next day. But because it had been so long, they couldn't give her any of the immediate stroke drugs or anything that they do when you have a clot. And it was a clot-style stroke. It wasn't I guess that's an ischemic versus the kind where you bleed out. Forget what that's called. But anyhow, it was in her left pons, and we think that the PEMF moved it along and helped that be an isolated, minimal point of damage for her brain. So even though she did lose control over the right side of her body, she couldn't hold a fork and feed herself. She was struggling to walk. She didn't get locked-in syndrome, which can happen when you have a stroke in the left pons. And so there we were in the hospital. They were like, look, your dad can't take care of her. He was diagnosed with severe osteoporosis. He was barely getting around at the time. And so she has to go to rehab. And my brother and I were there, and we didn't know what to do. And Mom and I had been so proactive for so long. I had to decide with obviously my brother's buy-in, but I had to make what I thought was a good call. Should she go home and then get her straight into HBOT, get her straight into the clinic where she could do these things, or send her to rehab? And they kind of misrepresented what rehab was going to be like. We sent her to rehab. We thought it was going to be a few days, maybe a week. And they were angling to keep her 14 to 21 days. And what they did was they strapped her to the bed, or if she was in a chair, they strapped her to the chair. She was able to walk, but they wouldn't let her. So when she had to go for therapy, They wouldn't allow her to go on the walker to get there. They kept her in the wheelchair. They kept her strapped down, and then they gave her caffeine 3 times a day. Yep. And then obviously
Weird.
the worst foods in the world, but it was coffee
Yeah.
in the morning and tea for lunch and dinner. And so they they told me, so they're amping up her blood pressure. She's super stressed. She's on caffeine, and they won't let her move around. And so there was nothing that was going to get her into a state where they wouldn't let her go until let her leave until her blood pressure came down. They had her on 3 blood pressure medications. A stroke can temporarily increase blood pressure, and it can resolve. But it wasn't, and none of the drugs were helping. And so I happened to watch Ben Azadi's video with Nathan Bryan, who creates the N101 nitric oxide supplement.
Mm-hmm.
Happened to watch it while she was in rehab, while we were struggling through this. And he talked about 50% of people not being able to regulate blood pressure at all with medication, and that it's a nitric oxide problem. This happens to be the same supplement she stopped taking 3 months before.
Okay, I was going to ask that. I'm like, what was the
Uh-huh.
supplement that
Yeah.
she's taking? Okay, I got it.
And she ran out, and it's expensive. It's $60 a bottle, and she just stopped taking it. She takes it now, but
Yeah.
we brought that. I had a few left at home because I keep it on hand just for days when I feel like I want more energy. And I brought it to rehab. I told her doctor, and I said, I think this might help. She stopped taking this, and that I think she needs this to get her blood pressure down. Within 2 days, it did come down, and we got his permission for her to leave. But she was not on track to leave. And if they weren't constraining her and only letting her exercise in 20-minute pre-approved intervals 2 times a day, and sometimes not at all in a day, I wouldn't have been so adamant about getting her out of what I call rehab jail, because they just were so intent on protecting their own liability. They did not have her best interest at heart. And in that period of time, my dad, he showed up every day. He hadn't been driving. He started to drive. And he was showing up every day, and he was sitting there all day, and he was taking care of himself by himself at home. And so I was like, hey, you can spend 5 hours at rehab every day next week like you have been, or you can step it up and also take care of mom. And he's like, let's get her home. So we got her out of there. And within a day of being home, I got her to the Wi-Fi Wellness Clinic in Louisville. Elaine Pauly, who owns Magna Wave, owns that clinic. And they have hyperbaric and PEMF and cryo and sauna. We weren't putting her in cryo. But and she had the PEMF at home, so she didn't need that. But I knew that the oxygen would repair her brain. And there's a video on my website on biohackingstartswithno.com of her progression, where I think I started the video on day 2, what it was like for her to get up from the chair, and then 4 weeks later, what it was like for her to walk out.
Yeah, I think that's the videos I was watching that was like, is really cool to watch. Is a cool, you're like, wow, this is impressive.
And she did about 75 minutes in the pressurized chamber. So it was 90 total, because you have to pressurize and then come out. So about 75 minutes. It's compressed oxygen. It was a mild chamber. It wasn't one of those medical clinics. So mild chamber, compressed oxygen, 75 minutes, 6 days a week for 4 weeks. And she drove after that. Like, when she went in, she couldn't hold a fork. She came out and she's fine. Now, she's gradually improved. Fine is not where mom wants to be. Mom wants to do great. Mom wants to get up off the floor unassisted. That's always her goal for her own, her measure of aging well is, can I get up from a seated position on the floor without using my hands? And she can do that today. And this was May of last year.
That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, I recall that from the videos. Like, I think, like you said, it was like the second day and she couldn't get out of the chamber unassisted. And I remember it must have been one of the last days or maybe 2 weeks through or whatever, but there was like a green chair that was much lower. I was like, oh, wow, that's a low chair. And she got out by herself. And I was like, all right. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that was really cool. You must have shared the stroke story with the PMF people, the MagnaWave
Yeah.
folks, like
Yeah.
about that. Did they have anything to say about, like, obviously they can't make any medical claims around it, but have they ever heard that from someone else as far as like the PEMF and stroke and anything like that before?
It helps microcirculation. And so they suggested that on a very low setting to have it near the back of her head would help her continuously improve. And so she did that for a while too. But she didn't do a lot of ongoing PEMF, but she did do that regular 75-minute every day, 6 days a week. She would have done it 7, but they were closed on Sundays.
Right. Okay.
The protocol really only recommends 5 days a week, but I figured her situation was severe enough. She could do the extra day and it would be fine.
Yeah, because there's a difference between, because I know the ones like you see like Brian Johnson get in, and like the hard shell ones that I think it's like the atmosphere goes up higher, right? And the soft shell
Right.
ones are just a little bit less.
Yeah,
So,
this was
um,
1.4 ATA.
okay.
I think the
And,
hard shells are right now, your standard at home hard shell can get up to about 2.0
okay.
ATA, but the brain doesn't love that much oxygen. And so it helps with epigenetic age reversal for sure to go up that high. But if you want to do it all the time, you probably shouldn't go over 1.5. And the Israelis have done a bunch of research about 1.5 ATA. And that's where you see telomere lengthening and age reversal without any brain side effects.
Oh, cool. Okay. And so like, and I think the most of the soft shell ones get up to that
They're
1.5, right? Or
they
1.4.
they're usually just shy of that, 1.3 to 1.4.
Okay. Yeah, I remember being at one of the events I go to regularly is the Healthspan Summit in LA,
Mhm.
and they always have the HBOT chambers there. Then they have these pill type ones, and I forget the name. I think I want to say it's like American HBOT or something like that. But basically, it looks like a big pill that you get into, and
Yeah,
and I think that's 1.4 is what I recall. But yeah, I mean
yeah.
that stuff's so cool. It's like, again, with like biohacking and longevity and all this stuff, there's all these cool tools. I'm like, man, I wish I had $1 million that I could just like outfit like the best studio and have all this stuff,
Yeah.
but I'm a big 80/20 proponent there. And also, like, like you say, the biohacking starts with no, right? Or, this, that. So let's get into that, because, we're talking about a little bit of minimalism here, and the minimum effective dose, I'm imagining, and just kind of saying no. So
Well, I
what
can
is that?
continue on that same theme with the HBOT and how it didn't work for me
Yeah.
and why I say it starts with no. So I knew for my mom that that was the right thing because she had already eliminated so many assaults to her body, right? Like she was on a low sugar diet. She was doing all of the things that one does, the filtered water, the filtered air. She's like really dialed it in. What she didn't dial in at that time was stress. And she was really stressed out at the time she had the stroke, and she didn't know that her blood pressure was up. But in my case, the reason why it's so important to me that people don't take this conversation and say HBOT helps with everything, as anyone selling HBOT will tell you it does.
Right.
When I was sick, I thought that I had burnout. I went for a brain scan right away, a SPECT scan. I went to a neurologist when I had severe sudden cognitive decline. And he said, you have a traumatic brain injury and you need neurofeedback, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and this drug called nimodipine. And the drug is supposed to relax the blood vessels of the brain and allow the blood to flow more freely. And I started to do some research, and literally no one was using that for anything but a stroke. It's not used for TBIs. He was the only doctor doing it. And I said, okay, I'm not sure about the drug. I started the neurofeedback, and then I went to see the doctor at the HBOT clinic. And he asked me what protocol I was given, and I told him, and he said, oh, Dr. So-and-so. I was like, wait, how do you know that? And he goes, he's the only one who recommends that drug. And so I didn't take the drug, and the guy at the clinic, the doctor suggested a mild chamber rather than the 2.0 chambers they had inside the clinic. He said it would be better for my brain. And so I bought one. I bought a mild chamber. I was running a company. I wanted to go all the time. I wanted other people in my life to enjoy the benefits. I spent $27,000 on a hard shell chamber and put it in the office because it wouldn't fit in the elevator where I lived. And then I started to use it and I got massive, massive headaches because we didn't know I had mold. We didn't know what was wrong with me. And so I'm having this Herx response from the mold in my brain that we don't know is there, that's causing these massive headaches. And I'm doing what everyone recommends is the number one thing you can do to improve oxygen flow in your brain, but it wasn't right for me. And so that was a huge lesson. And I tried other things. I tried a photobiomodulation helmet, things that should have helped my brain perform better, should have helped me feel better. And that's why, for me, biohacking starts with no. It's because we have to figure out what we need to get rid of first, whether it's a toxin in our bodies or a food that is disrupting the way we feel or whatever the case may be. Maybe it's sedentary life that we need to give up. We need to just move more. These things are the most important first steps, because it wasn't until I started to do those things, letting go of the things that were disrupting me, detoxing, getting out of my home. I had to give up my home because it had mold in it. I had to move to a place that was safe. And only at that point, and once I could take gentle, gentle binders to release the mold that was in my body, only then did any of these optimizing techniques start to help.
Wow. So what clued you in that it was mold? Was it a mold test that you took, or did someone suggest it? Because I feel like your story sounds so familiar, right? It's like, oh my God, I've got brain fog and it's got to be all these things. And I'm going to start, doing intervals or going to the gym. Yeah, I mean, whatever the litany of things that people add.
Right.
And then it always seems to be like years later, like, then I went to a naturopath and they said it's mold. And I was like,
Yeah. So I was desperate and I was listening to every podcast I could and reading every book I could. My intelligence wasn't impaired. In my cognitive impairment, I still had my intellect, but I didn't have the processing. So I couldn't commit to short-term memory and I couldn't work my way through a sequence. But I could read. I just wouldn't necessarily remember it. It took great effort. And I took a lot of notes, but when I really had something that I wanted to remember, I could. And I was listening to one of Dave Asprey's books, and he described his brain scan, which was the same kind I had done. And he described a slide in that scan that looked like one of mine, that looked like a toxic pattern in the brain. And he explained that had been from mold. He didn't have a drug or alcohol problem. And I could relate to not having a problem like that. I remembered the toxic looking slide the way he described it, went back and I looked at it and I thought, I'll get tested for mold. And because I would test anything that I could come up with. I had just tested for arsenic. That was a terrible decision. So I had crab cake 36 hours before I tested for arsenic. And I was taking activated charcoal because Dave Asprey said it was a good idea to do that every once in a while. And I was just doing anything Dave Asprey said at the time because I was biohacking. I hadn't come up with the no theory first. And so I took activated charcoal after eating a crab cake, which meant I peed out a bunch of arsenic the morning that I did a heavy metals test.
No. Oh, no.
And so someone from the lab called me, not even Everlywell, which is who I contracted through. Like, that was who sold me the test. Their lab in between had a tech that picked up the phone, called me and said, I'm not supposed to call you, but you have so much arsenic in your body, you might just die. And I thought immediately I was about to die. And that's called the nocebo effect. Like, you can't easily overcome from a very solid belief that you might be dying. And someone telling you that you're about to die is a pretty good indicator for most people that they might die.
Yep.
And so I didn't know any better. I started chelation therapy and got tested right before we started the drip. And that result came back 10 days later and said I didn't have arsenic poisoning. So stopped chelation, switched to glutathione. Uh, and it was about a month later that I tested for mold. So I was trying anything and everything to get better, feel better. And it wasn't until I found the right thing, the thing that was actually wrong with me, before I could get better. It didn't matter what I did. Didn't matter what mitochondrial support I was taking, all of the mitochondrial supplements. Um, didn't matter.
That's crazy. I mean, like when you're relating that experience, I was just thinking like I would probably think I have like early onset dementia or something like to
So I thought,
that, because it's like the brain, and you're just like, oh no, it's like, am I, like, is this something that's happening there? But yeah, I feel like that's such a common thing that happens to people, and especially like with biohacking, because you do hear someone that's like, oh yeah, Dave Asprey, like he's cured, all these things in his life, and he seems to be a pretty healthy, happy guy, and then you're just like, I'm going to try all these things. And, and there's also just a ton of other biohackers, medical advice out there. And yeah, like it's so easy. It's like, oh, 3 grams of, 4 grams of omega-3s, let's go.
it'll fix everything.
Yeah.
But
So you just like jump in both feet. And then, it seems later that, even just like yesterday, I was talking to the NeuroAge, Dr. Glorioso, and she was talking about, she went to a dinner, and and I'm just, I guess the story just resonates with your, like, saying no to things, and this dinner in Silicon Valley she's at, like everyone at the table is like taking 50 plus supplements a day, and she's like,
yeah,
what are you people doing? Like, you have no idea. Like vitamin D, I mean, she didn't say anything specifically, but it's like, you don't know. Vitamin D, yeah, it's great, it's healthy, but you don't know how it interacts with, say, if you're taking metformin, or or just like B vitamins and like all these things. Like, yeah, each one of these things might be fine on their own, but you actually don't know how you're taking so many things. You don't know how they interact with each other, and you might be dragging yourself down by taking all these things. And so it's just one of those things
well,
that,
there's some
yeah,
studies coming out showing that biohackers in particular are starting to have kidney problems.
yeah, yeah. And I'd imagine that's probably from just taking too many supplements and kind of stuff like that, is my
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. And
Yeah.
not all of them are clean. A lot of them have heavy metal content. And so it matters to know where they're coming from. It matters to see the certification that shows that they're free of heavy metals. These things are important. And I try to get as much as I can in powder form. I don't take a lot. Even just like I like to take L-glutamine. It helps my gut. My gut feels a little better when I do. But I switched from the pills to the powder because I take even if I take 10 a day, which I don't always, it's usually 3 to under 10. I don't like taking the capsules. I don't know what's in that. What what is that cellulose made out of? I don't know. It seems like a silly thing to me, but if I can get it in a powder, I'll get it in a powder.
Well, I remember seeing an article written by, I forget what it was, but it's just one of those nerdy vitamin manufacturers that talk about magnesium stearates that are in almost all supplements, and how they're just awful for you. And that's the thing, is like, so many supplements are full of fillers, and that's
Yeah.
just, like you have this like 00 capsule, and it just, maybe, I don't know, like 50% of his fillers or something, and you're just like, oh my God, like I don't want the fillers. And so that sounds like a great way to kind of be doing your own powders. And I
Well,
know
and
I
speaking of
press,
filler, like all the mushrooms, you have to be really careful that you're getting the active ingredients in a lion's mane supplement because a lot of that is mycelium filler and it doesn't really do much at all. It is lion's mane, but it doesn't have the active ingredient in a lot of these examples. But
yeah.
speaking of lion's mane, it's another example of, not everything starts with what you start. Doesn't start with something new. My cousin called me one day and he said he was thinking about taking lion's mane, and he's a good old boy from Kentucky. And I was like, where did you even hear about lion's mane? And he goes, well, I'm having some brain fog and I heard it could help with that. And I was like, Brian, please stop eating at McDonald's. And he was like, what? I was like, yeah, that's causing your brain fog. And he goes, oh, okay. And then he asked me some questions over the next few days. And within 2 weeks, he lost 16 pounds. He just didn't really
Whoa.
take seriously until I said it, that that's where you start. You don't add lion's mane on top of a Happy Meal. That's not how this is done. That's not how this works.
I always appreciate, Brian Johnson, I mean, I really like Brian Johnson's stuff, and I think he seems to come across as a good guy, but like he has so much stuff going on, and I feel like he's been kind of more reiterating lately. He's like, look, it doesn't matter what you add on top of this, don't worry about the rapamycins and the metformins and all this. It's like sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Sleep, number one, like exercise, it's like these really back to basic things. And I think it's easy to lose sight of that, right? It's just so easy to be like, oh, I heard this multivitamin, and then you're just like, oh, but yeah, you're still eating McDonald's, or, I mean, whatever the thing is, you might have a desk job and you don't get out to exercise as much.
Heating your food in a plastic container. Like,
right.
That'll
Right,
mess with your
yeah.
hormones, which messes
Oh,
with your stress level, which messes with everything.
yeah. I was just listening to
Yeah.
Dr. Rhonda Patrick talk about that, and I think it was her, she was talking about like the black plastics are even worse because it's the recycled plastics and it has even more of the microplastics. And then I just started to look around and I'm like, oh my gosh, all that food delivery service, the keto, food delivery service, all comes in black plastic things. And you're just like, you just can't win sometimes.
Yeah.
So what is one of the first things that people should do before they, well, let me rephrase that. So, okay, so you just kind of described, that start with no. What does that actually mean? And you wonderfully went over all of that. So what is the first thing that most people should probably stop doing before they add anything new? And I guess, was it your cousin or brother's, McDonald's example is probably a great one,
Yeah.
but what's something that's like maybe, because obviously people are listening to this podcast and like to take away some actionable advice and listening. What
Well,
are
I
some of
think
the
that
things that people should
probably the
stop?
two most poisonous things that are most common in someone's life are sugar and screens. And so sugar is the root of inflammation. And if if we're not careful about the quantity of sugar we consume or the kind of sugar we consume, because we shouldn't be sugar free, and I don't like to eat artificial sweeteners. I love my apples and love my dark chocolate. And I do eat some white flour occasionally. I have some white rice occasionally. I eat potatoes, like I eat sweet potatoes and regular potatoes. And I know I'm probably not supposed to eat the skins because of lectins, but I've repaired my gut, so I can add some things back and it doesn't destroy me. But it's important that we're not overdoing it, right? So I think it's different for everybody. If someone's accustomed to eating sweets every night as a treat after dinner, or having a waffle for breakfast every day, or even a bagel for breakfast every day, that could be contributing to a situation where they don't feel good.
Yeah.
And then the screens at night are, sleep interrupting. So finding a way, whether it's the silly glasses or, it would be nice if they could just fix the screens to stop emitting the blue light.
I know. It's so annoying. Like one of the things that, we like to do is, I mean, we live here in Arizona, so a lot of times our just evenings are just spent outside because it's nice and warm. I mean, there's like, okay. And then you're like, okay, it's time to go to bed, nice screen free. But like once in a while, it's great to sit down and watch some Netflix or whatever.
Yeah.
It's so like, I mean, okay, you can wear the glasses, but I just wish a TV manufacturer would just like have, where you can just have
Have a
this blue light
setting.
setting off or like whatever.
Wouldn't that be great?
Phone, and I learned that from Brian Johnson, but the thing that you could go click it 3 times and then it turns red.
What?
So,
really?
Yeah, so you could do like the power button. I mean, if you have an iPhone, I'm sure Android has something like this too, but you press it's a shortcut. You have to stop. You have to
Oh, I have to
start.
find it. Okay.
But you
I'm
have to
like, that
program
doesn't
it, but it's
work.
basically hitting your power button 3 times, and I have it set to thing. But if you just Googled Brian Johnson red light shortcut on your phone, so I always do that at night. It's a great little easy hack. You don't have to go into screen settings and color and all
That's
that.
amazing. I
So
had no idea.
yeah, he
Yeah.
had that in one of his random videos, like
Wow.
I don't know, like 6 months ago or whatever. But yeah, for anyone listening, just Google that, and then otherwise, yeah, you just set it up in your shortcuts. So that's been a great thing. But again, like goes back to the I wish I had $1 million to create the perfect house, but I've seen people also do where they have the LED lights like the Philips Hue, and it just naturally goes to a red orange setting at night. So just even
Yeah.
all your lights, because even if you don't watch TV and you don't look at your cell phone, you still have your refrigerator lights that are blasting blue light, and then I've seen people, to coat their refrigerator, lights with, the blocking,
That's a
whatever.
good
But it's just
idea.
like, it's just everywhere though,
Yeah.
it's just a really hard thing to solve for. But yeah, it's really irritating. So, okay. So those are two great places to start, right? Sugar, cut down your sugar. Um, and you're just talking white sugars, right? I mean, does that include maple syrup and honey and kind
I
of
think
all?
it depends on who you are and what you're eating and how you feel, what your goals are. Like I really try not to be prescriptive. I think that it's hard to let go of something. And for someone it might be a soda and the other it might be, I mean, if you're having maple syrup, you probably don't need the pancakes either. Um, so one goes with the other. It's hard to say, but I don't want to demonize any of these foods because after I got better in moderation, I was able to add things back with
Right.
without having any adverse side effects. And so I think the goal is to be at a point in our health where, I mean, it's a kind of hormesis, right? That if I normally don't have sugar, if I don't normally eat something processed, and I eat something processed, then my body gets a little stressed and over responds. And maybe that's like cold therapy. I don't know. I just don't want to
Right.
demonize these things.
Yeah.
So I think it just, what we're trying to do is to get to a place where we can hear the signals the body's sending. And I don't like to talk about symptoms because symptoms imply a diseased state. And I like to think that the body's natural intelligence is sending accurate intelligence reports about what's going on so that we can make adjustments in real time. So if you think about the billions of processes happening inside our body, inside our cells every second, then you realize that doctors and scientists have never written down the full complexity of what the body can do. They don't know 100%. It hasn't been put in written language. So that means artificial intelligence doesn't know either, because all it knows is written language.
Right.
It only knows what has been stored. Now, it can process everything that's been stored really well, but nothing is processing at the rate our bodies do. And so if we treat our bodies as intelligent and sending the appropriate signal so that we can adjust in real time and give it what it needs, and stop seeing ourselves as diseased, but seeing ourselves as on a path to vibrancy, then I think it makes a difference. And so once we can understand those signals, make minor adjustments, feel those results, then we can make space for adding more. Like biohackers will say they want to live beyond 120, right? Like Dave's whole thing is beyond 180. And I think that that's silly, but also cute, right? Like that's adorable that Dave wants to live beyond 180 years. I hope he does. As we speak, the oldest living human has ever been 123. And so it seems like the DNA is encoded to live about 120 years unimpeded. Maybe biohacking actually gets us beyond that. But I would just be thrilled to live a good life a good 120-year life. That would thrill me. And I don't want to decline as I age. I want today to be like I'm just getting started in life. I want to feel like this is like a teenager. I want every day. I treat every day now like if I'm going to live another 50 plus years, then I'm just getting started. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I feel like that just encapsulates the health span versus lifespan argument there. It's
yeah,
like we want a health span more than a lifespan. Like, because 80 years well spent is much better than 100 years if you're just constantly in pain and struggling through all that. So, but yeah, I mean, that's the goal, right? Is to feel great all the way
and
up
to
until
have
the day you
people
die.
with us in old age who also feel great.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, I feel like I love watching Blue Zone documentaries, like there's so many of them out there. And it just, it's even like some of the old people are smoking and whatever. And you're just like, what is going on? But it always seems to come at like the most common thing. I mean, obviously they're all active, but it's all community, right? It's all of the
Right.
people who they're hanging out with and they're happy playing bocce ball or, like whatever it is. And you're just like, okay, that seems to be like almost the most important or one of the most important things is just hanging out with people you like and love and get along with and also being healthy there too. So and then the other thing I just wanted to touch on real quick that you remind me of, as far as like how I try to think about things for my life is less processed is the better, right? So with sugar and oils and all that stuff's so processed. And like the one thing I think about honey is like, well, yeah, it's a sweetener. It can spike your insulin and all that, but it's unprocessed. So
Yeah.
I think that's a great place for a lot of people to start, at least, is like the least process your food, no matter what it is probably a good idea and an easy place to start, where you look at the McDonald's and you're like, wow, like what are the ingredients? I don't know any of the ingredients in this hamburger bun. It's
Yeah.
just all crazy. Whereas like if you're like milling your own flour, maybe that's not you know, realistic. But like and then letting it ferment, with the sourdough, like we at our house we have a 120-year-old starter from Alaska. And
Wow.
I love pancakes, but they're sourdough pancakes and they're all buckwheat flours and
Mm-hmm.
heirloom grains and like that type of thing. And same with pizza and bread and everything. But but I guess the point being like it's fermented and they're heirloom grains and
Yeah.
it's like trying to get the best so I can kind of enjoy the junk foods, but also make very nourishing, healthy versions of those. Again, for me and what we do, but I always feel that's a good place to start is the unprocessed rule, as unprocessed as you can get.
Yeah.
So
And I,
walk us
I
through.
prefer a world where we're not judging each other for the choices we make.
Oh yeah,
I think that
yeah.
that kind of derision is just that is unhealthy. I want to let go of that. I want a world again where health isn't the second most divisive topic in our country, right? Like,
Right.
can we just eat in peace?
Right. Well, I feel like you touch on it just super briefly, but when you were talking about your mom and the hospital there, and it's the liability thing that I feel like when we're kind of going back and forth with our son with our pediatrician, and they're like, no, everything that the CDC says is all we'll do, and you're
That's all
like,
they can do. They
hold on,
cannot
like,
deviate.
yeah, and it's just like,
Yeah,
hold on, wait, like that's no, like I don't like, I mean CDC is fine. I have no problem with them. But just that cookies cutter for everyone, this is the only way. And it all comes down to liability. And
it
that's what
does.
it is. And it's just like, and it's so irritating sometimes that it's just like, okay, fine, I get it. That's what might work for most of the people. But it's like, I want to optimize child. I want to optimize me. I want to optimize family and community and everything. And that's what it is. It's like, it's become so divisive because there's the liability part of things. And then there's obviously the companies that are pushing whatever they're pushing, whether it be pharmaceuticals or, supplements or, foods or whatever. And then there's, and just like, yeah, it's crazy. 100% agree.
I used to get mad at the doctors. Like I had a doctor that wouldn't test me for C-reactive protein, and I stopped seeing him because he wouldn't test me for it. That was back
Hmm.
in like 2017 or 2018. I didn't even know about any of this world at the time, and I just heard of inflammation markers, and I thought I should know about mine. And he was like, "Well, if it's high, what do? We can't do anything for inflammation, so we don't test for it." And I know now, having brought my inflammation down, I took the Ginfinity Advanced panel with all the interleukin markers that they test for. And the things that were sky high when I was sick are all in normal range now. And so I know that I can, I've done it. I have brought inflammation down. I've measured it. And I think back to that doctor, and he was fit and healthy looking and smart. I really thought he was a smart guy. And I bet he himself knows how to bring down inflammation, but he's not allowed to say it. He's not allowed to tell anyone. He can't. And I think maybe, I don't know what makes it different now in a cash pay versus insurance model, but I know that they risk losing their ability to have coverage through certain insurance companies if they deviate from the standard.
Yeah,
And they're
yeah,
protecting their own families by
yeah.
sticking to the approved dogma. And
Well,
that's what we're up
that's
against.
yeah, and that's exactly what it is. And like with longevity clinic marketing, my marketing agency that I work with, longevity clinics, like there's so many of the longevity clinics that require you to have a primary care physician. And the reason isn't that they can't be PCPs, it's that they are, if they're giving you metformin and these things that are just like, and peptides and all these things that, from, some pretty good research and evidence, but it's not the CDC or FDA or anything. So the liability, they still have to have you with a PCP to kind of get those baselines covered, like the, once a year annual checkups and stuff, because they're the ones doing the CDC stuff. But obviously, you and I and most of our audience probably knows they're not there to optimize. That's the sick care system. It's not
Right.
the optimizing sick care. So yeah, it's just kind of a little bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation here. And it's just really unfortunate. And I am, just like you said, is like, I'm so sick of it being divisive. Like I am positive that the truth will come out at some point or, whatever, but but it just takes more conversations like we're having and just like, hey, this is a little different here. This isn't what my doctor said to do. Like this crazy person over here that everyone's like criticized forever is actually has the one with the solutions for
Right.
mold or whatever these things are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And it's
oh,
funny watching people evolve too, because I have this childhood best friend who I met up with about 2 years ago, and we were talking about health and politics, and he goes, "It's not the hot dogs." I was like, "I didn't say it was the hot dogs. Like, what are we even talking about here?" And then I saw him a couple months ago, and he goes, "So I'm taking creatine." I was like, what happened to you? And so I think that the world is changing and the longevity movement's taking hold, and people are starting to get information that's helping them. Not that I'm a big fan of adding before subtracting, but I'm happy to hear he's taking creatine. I think he probably benefits. And yeah, I look forward to what I like to do is I like to put the clinicians and the health optimizers in the same room with my events, because the conversations get really interesting. In this world of longevity, you've got like your academics, and you've got your medical conferences, and you've got your festivals. Because I consider Dave's event to be more like a festival,
totally.
and and there's not a lot that bridges those gaps. Your regular person isn't going to go to a Buck Institute longevity summit, and clinicians are not going to festivals like Dave's. They go to little medical conferences, they get their CMEs, they do whatever. And I want to get everybody under the same roof. I want to mix it up, and I want to shake things up. I want to change the conversation from one that is high and mighty and I know this, blah, 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 to, we're all human. Let's just figure out a way to feel better. Let's do this together. Let's collaborate. Let's get to know one another. That's kind of the mission I'm on.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's talk about your event. So you've built large events before. What
Yes.
made you want to build the BioEdge Longevity Summit? I mean, it sounds like that was a little bit of an encapsulation of what it is bringing these kind of almost 2 or 3 different camps of, longevity or optimized health together. What made you want to build this, and what's in store for this next one in New York?
Well, when I first got sick with the brain injury that I had from mold, I was running Comic Cons. And so rather than
Yeah, you
encouraging
mentioned that. That's
people
awesome.
to dress up like Batman, I want them to be like Batman. And I ran 2 biohacking events in Miami called Biohacker Expo, and they were lots of fun and accomplished a lot and had some really interesting conversations in the room. We had JP Sears host the main stage at the last one.
He's so funny.
And it was a good time, but the marketplace is shifting. There were 2 things that changed in the last year that I really needed to pay attention to before I would do another one. One was that because of the divisiveness of that politics has put into the field of health, biohacking has turned into a bad word. Like, it really is something that the media wants to squash. And everyone is doing those techniques, but they're all calling it something else because they don't want to be pigeonholed as an extremist. There are a lot of people who've taken the vaccine who want HBOT therapy, right? So it's not this tiny little niche world of extremists, and people don't want to be lumped in as extreme. And so it's important to acknowledge that culture has shifted. Even Dave doesn't use the term biohacking with his event anymore. It's beyond. And so when Dave lets it go, the term is dead. And so
I feel like he's the
recognize
grandfather of that word in the first place.
I call him the godfather of biohacking. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that that term doesn't resonate with the general public. And if I really want to help masses of people, I've got to acknowledge I've got to meet people where they are. And then at the same time, I think I've lost my train of thought here a little bit. Oh, right. So putting all of those vendors in the same room, I had about 80 vendors promoting gain, optimize, supplement, hack, use this device, add this thing. And they're all great companies, but I wasn't offering any guidance. People were walking away more confused. So whereas somebody may have heard of a couple of things they could do to optimize their health, they walked out of my event with 50 new ideas. And sometimes that just shuts people down. And then they don't know where to start, what to do. And so it's important for me, that's why I wrote the book Biological Edge, was to create the framework that says eliminate, decode, gain, execute. That's EDGE. And so elimination before optimization, and reduce the noise so you can decode the signals so that, if you still want to add things, great, but let's create space for what we're going to add so that we can live better lives at the same time.
Got it. And then, so that's eliminate, decode, and then what was the GE part of EDGE?
Gain and execute.
Gain and execute.
So gain is really the whole biohacking community. That's all of the supplements and devices and things. That's something that we add to do better. But none of that can be reliably effective if we haven't cleared the path. If we're suffering from diet, mold, toxins, pollution, if we haven't cleaned our air, our water, and our food, then these things might not help. A mineral supplement is great, but it's not going to make up for eating out every single day. Just doesn't do it. It doesn't work that way. And so I wanted to be able to explain to people a sequence that they can remember. So eliminate before you optimize. Find a way to hear what your body's trying to tell you. Oh, this is my optimization right here.
There you
my
go.
Little puppy. I got him when I was sick because the doctor told me not to exercise. And I was like, well, that's dumb. And yeah, because I had POTS, and so I was getting dizzy when I stood up, and he was like, you shouldn't exercise. So I got a dog, so I'd walk 5 times a day.
Right. There you go. Yeah. When I had a dog, it was like, I think I got the wrong kind of dog. I had a German short hair, and it was just like, okay, he's like, let's go. Okay. So like, go for an hour run, come home. It's like, okay, I'm tired. I need to like, and then he's just like, let's go
Let's
again. And
go.
like, oh my God. Okay. Okay. I love your energy and it's too much for me, so yeah. Yeah. So you got to have a dog that's appropriate.
I feel like people say that about me sometimes. I love your energy. Sometimes it's too much.
That's a good thing. It's a high quality problem.
Yeah.
So where do you see, it's interesting to hear about the biohacking being a bad word. Cause I haven't heard that explicitly said, but like, as you said that, I'm like, yeah, like you kind of hear less and less of that. Just, for whatever reason. And yeah, I mean, I'm interested to wonder if like longevity is going to be a bad word at some point, because there are this, and I had someone on the podcast kind of talk about this longevity thing is this kind of like privileged, it's like you have to be in a certain financial economic class to kind of even participate in it. And even though
Right.
that's not necessarily 100% true, because obviously things like sleep and whatever, but that is still kind of a luxury. But, so I do think that, it's hard to talk about health and optimizing your health and longevity and like living a long, healthy life when, um, so I'm just, I guess I'm just kind of almost wondering out loud with you is like, if that's going to be a bad word at some point, because it's like, oh, longevity, like what do you like, like
Well,
something
some
like
people,
that. But
you're not wrong. Some people think that people who live longer are a drain on the system, because of Social Security. And then a lot of the things that people on this path are taking are inaccessible to people.
hmm
But if you get to the root of it, and that's part of the issue, is that the industry is made up of companies that are trying to profit off of people who are desperate for longer life, right? So it's not necessarily a holistic industry, but at the core of it, give me a couple of squats every day, do a 30 to 60-second plank, get outside and walk. I've switched from plastic Tupperware style containers to pasta jars. Pasta sauce jars are my new Tupperware. That didn't cost me anything. In fact, I have so many in my cabinet that I have to recycle them now.
Well, I feel like it's so old school too. Like I was just telling my wife the other day, like I remember going to my grandmother's like laundry room when I was a kid. And yeah, she had stacks and stacks. And granted, there's plastic cottage cheese containers too to reuse, but like, just like all the glass, like jars from every jam and jelly and whatever. And, those are to be reused. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like keep those peanut butter jars and and all that stuff. And hopefully the lid is okay. I feel like that's when I keep them. It's like the lids start to get all kind of mangled and then plastic and paint starts flaking off. So I'm like, I
Yeah.
wonder if this is, so anyway, so where do you see the longevity space going in the next few years? With, like you have a definite pulse on the industry with everything that you're doing and have your, involved in.
Well, the
Where do you see it?
longevity industry co-opted the weight loss industry. They've convinced everyone that GLP-1s are your way to greater health span. And even Eric Verdin, I think I saw him in an interview saying that they're seeing evidence at the Buck Institute that microdosing GLP-1s is helping prevent metabolic syndrome and is helping improve biomarkers of aging. And so I think people are looking at it from a lot of perspectives. Some biohackers would say that's cheating, and which I think is ironic because everything in biohacking seems to be like taking a shortcut. So pot calling the kettle, I don't know. But I think that the industry right now, as driven by the media and all the headlines that I see, is taking the GLP-1 movement and addressing their needs. And so people taking GLP-1s are generally recognized as needing to exercise more and take and consume more protein because of
Hmm.
the effect that those semaglutides have on the body. I'm not an expert on those compounds, and I haven't taken it, and I don't really know how they work or how it feels. But I do see a lot of headlines supporting gyms, protein. Even I saw something the other day about how they're putting doctors' offices inside of gyms now because that's where people are trying to get healthy. And so
Yeah.
if that's the trend where we're integrating um, medical care and working out, I think that's a really awesome trend. And I'd like to see where that goes. I just hope and pray that we're not going to end up in a situation where there are massive side effects that we didn't see coming and people end up in a situation that they didn't expect. I do hope that those people are being served by the longevity industry pushing those drugs on them. And
Yeah.
so that concerns me, but I also I just observe that yes, it does help to lose weight. Yes, it does help to bring down the cravings and the insulin levels and whatnot. So, you know, we'll see how this plays out for a few years. And, that will probably be the most impactful thing we have on the industry is the long-term effect of using these compounds, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder about that a lot. GLP-1s specifically, but also just so many, even just like rapamycin, or sirolimus, whatever you'd call it. But it was just such a hot thing there for a while. It was like, oh, like all these longevity doctors, were prescribing it. And I was someone who was taking it too. I was like, cool, this is great. And then it's like, oh, hold on here. You'll pump
Yeah.
the brakes. Let's
Yeah.
see what's going on. This might not be good because it's, doing XYZ, and maybe it's better to pulse it. And yeah, it's just, I
Yeah.
mean, just again, just going back to your framework, just say no, let it ride, see where it goes, and and just go from there. But yeah, just GLP-1s is just, that's just the shiny penny that just you just can't get away from it. It's everyone's talking about it, and it's there. And I get it why people are talking about it, because everyone's asking about it, right? And that's the
Right.
thing. And so if there's
But it's
people
also being
asking,
advertised, right? So people are asking about it because we're advertising it.
yeah, yeah. And and it has crazy results, right? I mean, you even see Weight Watchers pivoted from doing that, and now Weight Watchers is a GLP-1 company, which is
Yes. I didn't
incredible.
know that.
Yeah, so I just saw, I don't know, some ad, and I was just like, what? And then I did some research onto it, and that's their big pivot. But yeah, I mean, such is life. So Sandy, people are listening right now. What would you like to see someone do differently this week? What's something that they can say no to, or what's some framework that you can send someone away with that they can get some, no, some nuggets of advice or
Well, the one
something?
piece of
What do you want
advice
somebody to know?
I love to give is ironically not something to subtract, but something to do. It can do it in the car when you're driving. You can do it when you're alone in the shower. Very, very, very simple. Breathe in for 5 seconds and hum out for 5 seconds and do it 3 times. And that helps blood flow and heart coherence and the overall signaling of the body. So it's important that we have that everything has to flow well in order for us to reduce the signal to noise.
So the
And
humming, it
that's
doesn't matter what note, it's just hum. Just
the more nasally,
mm.
the better.
Okay.
So if your nose is vibrating, you're producing more nitric oxide, and that's going to help your blood flow better. And
Awesome.
so I like to hum when I'm in the car and doing random things. You can hum to the music, it doesn't matter. Just that nasal vibration is one of the best things you can do for your body.
That's cool. Yeah, that is some advice that you don't hear very often. And yeah, and there's a lot of wisdom to that. I know there's a lot of ancient wisdom with that, even just with the yogis and the Om and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of wisdom to that. So that's awesome. So more about you. Where can people find more about you, your books, learn more about the Edge Summit that's coming up in New York? What are the dates for that? Where can people find out more?
That's July 10th and 11th in New York City. And you can find everything about me at bioedgelongevity.com.
So BIOEDG Edge.
Yeah.
EDGE.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah. So BioEdgeSummit.com. Longevity. Okay. BioEdgeLongevity.com. Awesome. Well, with that, thanks so much for coming on the show, spending some time with us and our audience today. And everyone, if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it. That helps me out a ton, helps Sandy out, helps all our guests out. It's really, really cool. Go over to Spanner, SPANNR.com. Subscribe to our newsletter. We've got a weekly newsletter that goes out, just kind of talks a lot about the same things we're talking about today. Kind of more current news events in the longevity world. And otherwise, thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you on next episode. This is the Longevity Loop Podcast.